welcome to the first Life on Tap of the semester. So excited to have the fall roamers here, right? Where are you? Yes, please come introduce yourself. If I haven't met you yet, I'm Mrs. Stevens. So tonight, I have good news and bad news. The bad news is, unfortunately, Amanda Vicinanzo, maybe I got that right? I really hope so. She is unable to be with us tonight. She has sick kids, and I think all of you guys can relate and understand that illness is going around. So we want her to keep it at home and keep her kids healthy and take care of them in that way. So unfortunately, she won't be here, but we do have Maria Bonvissuto, I got that right, I think, here to talk to you guys about a lot of different things. And she's had an interesting journey in the couple years that she's been away from Christendom, and she's going to share kind of her transition period that she's going through now into a new job. So let me give you kind of her brief bio, and then I'll bring her up here. We have plenty of time afterwards to ask questions, so I hope that you guys will think of good ones to ask her, and she will be available for a little while afterwards if you want to speak one-on-one as well. Sound good? Awesome. So, Maria Bonvissuto graduated in 2015. She is a marketing associate for Oak Crest School in Vienna, Virginia. She majored in history at Christendom, and after graduation, worked for 2 years as an editorial assistant and senior assistant managing editor at Regnery Publishing in Washington, D.C. She lives in D.C. and enjoys reading, writing, playing guitar, traveling the world, and discussing all things good, true, and beautiful with her friends in her spare time. So please welcome Maria.
Well, thank you all for coming out and for having me, and thank you to Kristen and also Tom McFadden for asking me to speak. By the way, I was a fall roamer, so definitely the best semester to go. So Kristen already gave you the basics. I'm originally from Nashville, Tennessee. I graduated from Christendom in 2015 with a BA in history. So I'll just give you a basic overview of my career journey thus far. After I graduated, I went home for a few months for medical reasons and kind of to figure out my life. And while I was home, I had decided that I wanted to go into publishing. When I was in school here, I was interested in journalism, and I worked on the Rambler staff. I was editor-in-chief, my senior year, and I did an internship with the Collegiate Network. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but it's a really great organization. I highly recommend if you're interested in communications or editing or publishing to look into what they have to offer. So I did an internship with Verily magazine in New York the summer after my junior year, thanks to the Collegiate Network. And I also attended a journalism conference that they held. And while I was there, I realized that I really didn't want to be an investigative reporter, and I didn't really want to go the reporting route, but I love the written word and I love to write. So I was like, okay, what are my other options? Well, I love to read. If I worked in publishing, I would get paid to read all day. So what could be better than that? So after graduation, I went home and I was like, okay, I want a publishing job. I want to work in publishing, but I also want to be in DC because that's where all my friends are. So I started looking around for opportunities in DC, and I got an internship with the American Enterprise Institute, which is a conservative think tank in Washington, DC, in their editorial department. So I moved out there, and I basically did editing on scholarly papers that their fellows would write. And I also helped with some work editing the website. And while I was interning at AEI, I was looking into jobs at Regnery Publishing. I don't know if any of you have heard of Regnery, but it's a small conservative publishing house basically on the Hill. It employs a disproportional amount of Christendom grads. So if you're interested in a job there, I'm sure they would love to have you. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Rule family. They sent a couple kids here, but Maria Rule was the managing editor at the time. So I reached out to her and I said, I'm a graduate from Christendom. I'd like to learn more. Can we get coffee? And she said, sure. So we did. And then she was like, well, do you want to come see the office? It's right around the corner. And I said, sure. So she took me up to the office, and I got to meet Harry Crocker, who's the executive vice president of Regnery, and he wrote Triumph. I don't know if any of you have to read that for class, but So he showed me around and we talked, and then a few days later he called and he said, we have an editorial assistant who is leaving. Would you like to come and work for us and fill a position? And I said, sure, because I was basically broke at that point, and I was like, yes, money. So I did. I went to work at Regnery as an editorial assistant, which, for those of you who don't know, that's basically a copy editor. And if you want to work in traditional book publishing, that's basically the way to start. You start at the bottom and you work your way to the top by starting as a copy editor. So I worked as an editorial assistant for 2 years, and it's a crazy job. Basically, a typical day would be we would receive manuscripts. So there are copy editors and then there are principal editors. So the principal editors are the people with the exciting editing job. They see the manuscript first, they make big picture changes, and then they send it to the copy editors, and we look for grammar mistakes. We footnote everything, so if you know Turabian, you'll be great because it's Chicago style, which is basically the same. We would make indexes. We would work with the art department to lay out the book. Basically, the copy editor's job is to get the book to the press. It's a lot of project management, and it's also a lot of dealing with authors, and authors can be very difficult people. They can be divas a lot of the time. They don't like their work to be changed, so you have to be good at diplomacy if you're a copy editor. You have to know how to simultaneously flatter the author and tell them when they just can't get away with something. So it's, a unique skill. So I did that, and after about a year there, I was promoted to senior assistant managing editor, and basically my job stayed pretty much the same, but I started helping to run production meetings, which is where our art team and our publicity team and our production team got together and decided how long it would take to get a book to press and what needed to be done, and I would help create schedules to keep everyone on track. So I did a lot of that. And usually each copy editor would be working on 4 or 5 books at one time. So it's a lot of multitasking, and it's very tight deadlines. We usually have to turn around a book in a month to 2 months, which is insanely fast. But these days in publishing, all books, we're competing with journalism and the 24/7 news cycle, so the books are churned out really quickly. And I think my favorite books that I worked on were, I got to work on a book by Rusty Reno of First Things, Resurrecting the Idea of a Christian Society, and I also worked on Anthony Esselin's book, Out of the Ashes. So those were probably my proudest moments at Regnery, was working with them. So it was a good experience, but after 2 years, being a copy editor, you can get burnt out pretty quickly, and I realized that I wanted to do something that was a little more creative. I had spent a lot of time reading other people's writing and realizing some of it wasn't really that great, and I was like, I would just like to write more of my own stuff, and I'd like to be able to think out of the box more. And I also realized that if I wanted to really advance in publishing, I would probably have to move to New York unless I wanted to stay at Regnery for the rest of my life, and I just didn't want to do that. And I wanted to stay in DC because this is where my community is. So I started thinking about other ways that I could use my writing skills and other ways to work in the communications field. And since I had already ruled out reporting and journalism, I thought about maybe doing marketing, because that requires a lot of creative thinking and writing. And I started looking around for jobs, and through a personal connection, I found out about a job at Oakcrest School, which is an all-girls Catholic middle school and high school in Vienna, Virginia, and they were looking for a marketing associate. So I applied for the job, and I got an interview, and they hired me. And I've been working there since August of 2018, and it's been a really great job. I've definitely gotten to do a lot more writing. It's been really I've been able to be more creative. A typical day, I'm doing a lot of different things, but I'm in charge of the school's social media. I run their website. We're building a new website right now, so I'm helping to write the content and design the site. I write press releases. I am the point person for advertising. I take pictures of school events. I worked in marketing when I was at Christendom. I worked with Niall, so it's just continuing the tradition. And it's a really great position because I get to, besides writing and design, I also get to be involved in the life of the school, which when you're a copy editor, you're more like sitting at your desk in front of a screen for 8 hours, and this is a little more like interacting with people and getting out and seeing what the students are doing, so I really enjoy that. So that's my life right now, and it's definitely not what I saw myself doing when I was in Christendom, but I'm really happy to be doing it right now. I'm really happy in my job and at peace, so it's been a good journey. And Christendom really prepared me well for coming out of school and going into the real world, and I know that it's probably cliche, and I'm sure you've had it beaten into you like 100 times, but a liberal arts education really does prepare you really well for the outside world, and especially one here. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to and run into in DC who have been really impressed with Christendom grads and how much they know and how well they can communicate. And if you know how to read and write, you're already way ahead of most of the people our age out there. Like, so many people can't write to save their lives. When I worked at the publishing house, most of the people who sent us manuscripts, you would probably be appalled. It was kind of amazing. So they really do teach you how to write here. I don't know if any of you have Mrs. Hickson for class, but she was so hard, but she especially, her classes really taught me how to write, and I'm really grateful for that. And also just the type of work ethic that is expected of you at Christendom will really help you. Like, you're going to be responsible, you're going to show up for work on time. Those are also things that a lot of people out there don't do. So you're already way ahead of a lot of candidates out there, so you shouldn't worry too much. In terms of what you can do if you are interested in communications or publishing, I would say get as much concrete experience writing and editing as you can. Obviously, an internship at a publishing house would be ideal if you want to go into publishing. It's a hard business to get your foot in the door, but you don't necessarily have to do that. You can get editorial fellowships at like a think tank in DC or with a newspaper. It doesn't have to be book publishing, and places like the Collegiate Network have resources that can connect you with something like that. A couple summers, I would go home and I would do freelance writing for my diocesan newspaper, and that looked good on my resume because it showed that I had taken initiative and that I knew how to write. And also, you want to be building up a portfolio of clips and writing samples so that you have something that you can show potential employers, because a lot of them are going to want to see proof that you can actually write. They're not just going to take your word for it. So it's good to have some things in writing. Prepare that and start as early as you can. Like, don't freak out if you haven't gotten a fantastic internship yet, but definitely find a way to write. These days there are so many online publications where you can just submit things. There's just so many opportunities. And there's a Rambler here on campus, so that's a great thing too. And also, don't be afraid to reach out to people. I know this is also cliche, but it really is a lot about who you know and what personal connections you make. And even if you don't know a lot of people in like the profession that you're interested in, if you just do some research and find someone who's working at a company that you're interested in, and you reach out to them and email them and explain your situation and just be like, I'm interested in learning more about what you do. I'd love to get coffee sometime, just talk about it. A lot of people will take time out to do that. They won't be like annoyed at you. They really like to help like young people who are trying to get their foot in the door, and people love to talk about themselves. So if you just ask them to tell you all about their great work, they'll be more than happy to. I mean, you don't want to go to them and be like, please, like, I need a job, help me, but you can, just present it as you're curious and you'd like more information, and it does work and it does pay off. And even if they don't have a job opening in mind right away, if something does come up, they'll remember you later on, and that can be really helpful. So yeah, that's basically been my experience. I guess I would just close by saying that it's good to have a plan, and you should definitely be taking steps to prepare for your future and not put things off until the last minute, but I would encourage you not to freak out if you don't have everything figured out. Most people don't end up doing what they thought they would be doing in college, and they're perfectly happy, and you're not going to have everything figured out right away, right out of college most of the time, and that's perfectly fine. You'll still have a happy life, I promise. So yeah, that's basically it. Thank you for listening.